Well, hey guys, thanks again for joining us. As Julie mentioned, I'm Wendy Lynch, and today's webinar is on preparing healthy meals, part of the series that we've been doing the last several weeks. But before we learn all about the Savory Suppers, I did want to let you know about a few upcoming personal finance webinars. And there's one tomorrow, May 27th, Managing Money in Uncertain Times, and also a 4-part series, Developing Your Financial Plan, which starts June 3rd. Note the time of those webinars, because they do start from 12 to 1 Eastern Time. And today's webinar is brought to you by the University of Florida IFAS Extension, which is part of a nationwide educational network. And our mission is to provide resources for individuals and families to sustain and improve quality of life. And as always, I'm so delighted to introduce our webinar team, Dr. Wendy Dahl, Associate Professor and Extension Specialist at the University of Florida, Julie England, Extension Agent in Seminole County, Wendy Lynch, Extension Agent in Putnam County, Marie Eric, Extension Agent and County Extension Director in Liberty County, and Annie Sheldon, Extension Agent and County Extension Director in Clay County. And just a quick review for new folks that are joining us for the Zoom webinar. If you don't see a box of tools options at the bottom of your screen, just hover with your mouse at the bottom of the page and the tool option should pop up. And this is where you'll find that chat box. So click on the chat and there's a to option, and we did confirm that it is allowing us to send questions and comments not only to the panelists but also to all participants, which we encourage you to do. And at the close of today's webinar, you'll receive a short survey online, and we appreciate your time and feedback, and it's a pretty quick one. And just a quick disclaimer before we start today's webinar: the information provided is for educational purposes only. Reference to a commercial product does not constitute an endorsement by the webinar team members or the University of Florida IFAS Extension. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to the next session in Preparing Healthy Meals series, Savory Suppers. And it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Julie England.
Well, good afternoon, all. This has been a really interesting topic to research. But before we get going on, actually, I didn't do most of the research for some of this stuff that I want to mention. My co-author, who is Daniela Rivera Mendoza, who's an extension and research coordinator, and Daniela did a lot of the actual looking for the research part of it. I got to do the fun stuff. But anyway, I just want to make sure that I mentioned Daniela. And so this is actually the 6th as part of 2 different series related to food prep. So far we've talked about slow cookers and how to use an electric pressure cooker. And then Wendy Dahl and Wendy Lynch provided some really great information on plant-powered meals and the importance of thinking about centering your meat more on plants versus on meat, and to think about your protein sources. We're not saying you need to become a vegetarian, but to think about making your meals healthy by adding more plant foods and maybe reducing a little bit of the meat. We discuss all kinds of salads, that salads aren't just lettuce, there's all kinds of different kinds of things. And then last week, Annie Sheldon talked about grilling. And all these are parts of can be used to create a healthy diet. And so, but today we kind of want to, it's kind of our capstone in a way, and that we want to start you thinking about the term savory. And I just want to mention your handouts packet. So the handouts, and actually I will admit that 2 of the recipes and part of the handout are also in just slow cooker meals one, but there's some of my favorites. The handout, part of it's from an in-person class I did on Savory Suppers. Savory Summer Suppers was that class, but also it's got some recipes from Marie Eric, and then a really nice handout from Kentucky Extension, University of Kentucky Extension, on stir frying. But to think about the term savory, and that there's healthful meals in all kinds of food preparation, even frying, because you could also oven fry, you could air fry, but also part of that related to frying is portion control and thinking about what's in your overall meals. Certainly some meals are healthier than others, but it really to look over the overall picture of what you're eating, and how to make quality meals. So it's not just about savory suppers, it's that entire process of creating flavorful, fulfilling meals. And so up on your screen, we've got, it's from the dictionary when I looked it up, about 3 different descriptions of savory. And so they're similar, but not exactly the same. Things about, your overall effective seasoning in your meals, things that are like spicy or salty without being sweet, which is kind of really what I thought more of as savory until actually we started reading more about the topic. And that savory can also be inducing or marked by rich or the meaty taste sensation of umami. So has anybody even heard of the term umami? And I can't see the chat box, so Wendy or Marie or Annie, you need to tell me what. But umami is kind of one of those terms that's kind of, I guess, a trendy term.
So far, we've had a few no's, mostly no's, a couple of yeses.
Okay. So some things to think about related to umami is that it's kind of recognized as the 5th taste. So we've heard, especially in elementary school, we've heard about the other tastes, which are sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. And so in like I think it was 2008, a Japanese scientist introduced the idea of umami as the 5th taste. Say that it's like kind of meaty, brothy or savory sensation. And it's associated with glutamate. So glutamates, which we'll talk more about in a second, are amino acid, and it's a building block of protein. But aside from the yummy flavor, umami alters our perception of other tastes. So sodium tastes saltier, sugar tastes sweeter, sour and bitter are less acerbic and biting. And it also enhances the perception of the thickness and the complexity, and it can improve the overall palatability of some foods and beverages. So it's kind of one of these things that can run through all of our taste flavor. And back to the senses, one of the interesting articles I read, actually from Smithsonian Magazine, was talking about, I don't know if you remember in elementary school or middle school, that you'd have the picture of the tongue and it showed different set places on your tongue that you could taste different things. And that's actually not true. There may be some parts of your tongue that those sensations, those tastes may be more, but all your flavors are throughout your tongue and all of your taste buds. There's just no one particular place where you taste different things. So umami is found in fish, meats, milk, tomatoes, vegetables, and all kinds of different foods. And as I mentioned, umami is associated with glutamates. And some of you, especially the older ones of us, remember maybe 20 years ago, there was a big deal about monosodium glutamate, which is produced by a fermentation of starch, sugar beets, and sugar cane. And it was a really common seasoning, and it's still in our food system, but it's primarily found in American-style Chinese food, canned soups, vegetables, processed meats, and also it's found in some naturally in some foods like yeast extract, soy extracts, and also as tomatoes and cheese. But it has been, some people are food sensitive to monosodium glutamate, and so, but according to the FDA's research, that it does need to be listed on the label, but it's considered to be generally recognized as safe. So umami foods, so not the MSG, but the ones that are naturally occurring in foods, here's kind of a general list. So when you think of umami and about things that enhance the flavor, probably everyone on this webinar has a bottle of ketchup at home in the refrigerator. And ketchup's an umami. I'm getting my tongue twisted. But it's generally thought of, people think of it in terms of Asian foods, Chinese and Japanese primarily, but it's found in many foods, say ketchup, Parmesan cheese, and I mean like the real Parmesan cheese more so than the, the green can of it. Other cheeses, sauerkraut, sausage. So the dairy foods that has umami flavors are primarily aged cheese, protein foods such as seafood, beef, pork, and chicken. But in lots of plant foods, a lot of it in mushrooms and in tomatoes. Seaweed, for those of you who are seaweed eaters, I haven't quite gotten into that one yet. Soybeans, cabbage, peas, corns, carrots, all offer one or more umami compounds. And then fermented foods such as soy sauce and and especially tomatoes do have umami flavors to them. All right, so here's your math lesson. 1 + 1 = what? I know you're probably thinking it's obviously 2, but in the umami world, it's not necessarily 2, it's more than 2. Combining umami foods doesn't just add twice the flavor, but they work together to magnify flavors. So umami substances have also been reported to show synergism, which means that the two umami substances, when mixed, the mixture is stronger than the sum of the effects given to two substances. So I thought that was, when we were working on this webinar, I thought this was like, the more I read, and actually when I was talking to some other people on our team, we all thought it was really, umami is really interesting about the fact that it's easy to incorporate this into the foods that you're already doing, or a lot of this you're probably already doing but didn't really think about it. And that you can actually not only just improve the flavor, but you can increase it maybe slightly exponentially. All right, so let's kind of back up a second and think related to nutrition. And so about savory foods, our appetite and satiety. And satiety is how satisfied or full we feel after eating. And so some interesting research has been done about adding umami flavors to low-calorie appetizers, and that they stimulate the appetite and enhance your full feeling. So that by adding some of these flavors, you can make some of your healthier appetizers still help you give that full filling. But then the other interesting research was also that a savory appetite reduced liking, which was the term that was used in the research paper, but basically how you enjoyed and how much you ate of high-fat savory foods compared to appetizers with other tastes. So that by comparing a savory appetizer versus like a high-fat appetizer, the savory one had more flavor. So you can use some of this information to maybe make some little tweaks in some of your food preparation to make you give you that satisfied feeling, and to think also about foods overall that give you that pop of flavor. They make you, so if you had something, and I've used this related to chocolate in classes, but this, it's kind of the same in the fact that if you are wanting something and you eat like a whole bar of kind of not really good chocolate, but you're not satisfied, but if you eat one that's got a lot more flavor, a better quality, it gives you that satiety that you actually had that flavor that you want. And so the same thing goes with savory foods as well. So let's think a little bit about savory and chronic disease. And so that's part of our whole goal, is to get you to eat healthier. So adding salt improves like the sensory properties of food to pretty much anything you eat, and it's cheap. So it gives you some added sensory stuff. You get that salty flavor, and it's cheap to use. And the more you use, the more you want salty foods, which can make it difficult to reduce the amount. So when people are trying to reduce the sodium content, if you switch suddenly to low or no salt, your food's all going to taste horrible because you're so used to that salty flavor. So if you're trying to reduce salt, you can cut back on the salt and then increase maybe some of the savory flavors. And then you're not going to miss the salt so much. And why we're concerned about salt and sodium is, especially with people who are more salt sensitive, it can have a detrimental effect on your blood pressure. And also fat as well, primarily saturated fats, can cause health problems, primarily heart diseases, or even complications for other morbidities. And so when we look at this picture of our shrimp Alfredo, which I'm pretty sure that portion size may be a little large, but shrimp and also the Parmesan cheese that goes into Alfredo are umami foods. So it's going to give us that satiety, but really not one of the most healthful things that to be eating. And so what could we do to make some changes? Well, let's look at the next slide, which has a picture of pasta with tomatoes, which they actually looked at in this. This is from a coworker's class, and it looks like they're roasted cherry tomatoes, and it's got fresh basil, and it's got chopped up mozzarella cheese. So other things that you could do to make this healthier, or you can even put in ideas in the chat box, but my ideas would be add some fresh mushrooms in there, and instead of having the mozzarella cheese, put in fresh shredded Parmesan cheese, which is going to give you more of that umami flavors. Any other ideas on what you might do to this that anybody wants to put in the chat box to make it healthier and tastier?
We had spinach.
Ooh, yum.
As a suggestion. Any others?
So, ground turkey.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, sauteed peppers.
Peppers, yes. I saw that and I was like, ooh, yes, absolutely.
I'm glad we aren't doing these during lunchtime. They always make me hungry. So, but just tweaking things a little bit and adding something to your simple recipe can improve it. And so, so focus on making your foods nutrient dense, adding things to make them healthier. I say that portion supplies. If you're just dying to have shrimp Alfredo, just don't have the humongous plate of it. Have that and some other vegetables, and have a variety of different foods, and to focus most often on lower fat, lean protein foods, healthier oils, things like that. All right, and I know you all have seen these before if you've been on our webinars previously, but here are some examples of healthy dietary patterns, and primarily thinking about the DASH diet or the DASH eating plan, which is the dietary approach to stop hypertension, and the Mediterranean diet, which have both been shown through research to help reduce blood pressure, and also especially the Mediterranean diet about some of the chronic diseases, but both are excellent research-based eating patterns that can really help you improve your diet. And within those, to think about plant-based diets, which are not the same as vegetarian diets. You're emphasizing whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and things like that, but that your plate is more plant-based focused versus meat focused. So, and if you missed the plant-based diet webinar from several weeks ago, it is recorded and available for viewing. All right, so let's think a little bit about how you can create a savory supper. And so to think about whether you can buy stuff that's fresh, frozen, or canned, sometimes depending on your budget, and also sometimes it's just nice to have frozen and canned stuff. Sometimes canned and frozen foods can cost less. With canned food, think about maybe looking for low sodium or no salt added. Also things like soy sauce or miso sauce, you can buy them in reduced sodium. There's no such thing as a low sodium soy sauce, but there is reduced sodium. But there's lots of different things that you can do, and also think about adding fresh, well, even dried herbs and spices, but fresh give you that pop of flavor and really can give you that savory taste. And so also some things to think about when creating those healthy savory suppers are roasting, grilling. Annie talked last week about grilling. Lots of things you can do on your grill. I swear our family would starve to death without our grill. We use it a lot. But also that caramelizing of vegetables and that roasting or grilling process breaks down the protein, helps release that umami flavor. Choose lean meats more often and heart healthy foods like heart healthy oils. Make sure that you're incorporating seafood in your diet once or a couple times a week. Some really good health aspects of increasing your seafood. And then legumes. Also information on that in the plant-powered webinar, but beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, they add a variety of nutrients, but also something to think about creating that healthy, savory supper, about adding some of these different things like legumes and seeds. They also, and nuts, they can change kind of that texture of your food in a way that it gives different, so your food's not all like one texture. It adds some crunch, which also adds more interest to your food. All right, so here are 3 great sources for recipes. One's Snap Ed Connection, which is from the USDA, includes a lot of low-cost recipes. Med versus Meds, which is all about the Mediterranean diet and Mediterranean lifestyle. It's from the North Carolina State University Extension Service, and they have not just recipes, but great information on eating the Mediterranean diet. I highly recommend that website, as well as the website from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute on the DASH eating plan. All really good downloadable information on these sites. All right, so any questions that are burning at the moment, Wendy?
Nothing burning.
All right, so does all this sound complex and that you probably just need to go out and buy some new stuff, go buy those specialty foods? As you probably know, I'm probably going to say no. Actually, I'm definitely going to say no, because you need to find out what works for you. If you want specialized cooking equipment, if you want the latest, greatest, whatever, go for it. If you bought cooking equipment in the past that you're not using, it's sitting there on your counter in your way, why are you keeping it? Somebody gave you that bread maker 2 years ago, you've used it 3 times, you feel guilty getting rid of it because your mother gave it to you, your kids gave it to you. Get over the guilt and rehome it somewhere where somebody who wants to make bread or somebody who wants a big food processor, and have things in your kitchen that work for you, because the more stuff that you have to dig for, the more stuff that clutters your counter, it's going to slow you down in getting your cooking. So by streamlining how you cook, you're going to probably cook more. Especially, and if you got to move stuff around from counters in order to work, you're just going to go tired and go out to dinner because you don't feel like dealing with it. So find what works for you. And if you've got limited time, I mean, you may still be working from home. I'm cooking more because I don't have the commute, but still, I'm working 8 hours a day, and so I still have limited time. So think about what works best for you and your family. Simple recipes. If you look at a recipe and it's got 15 ingredients, are you going to make it? So think maybe 7 ingredients or less. Plan meals for the week. Look at everybody's schedule. Don't just make the plan and realize that you have something you have to take the kids to or whatever. Look at everybody's schedule and plan meals for the week and be flexible. So think about having some flexibility in your meal plan. So if if your schedule's subject to change a lot, life keeps happening, maybe keep things in the freezer or in your pantry so that you can pull stuff out and make a meal. Maybe plan meals for like 4 weekdays and realize that on the 5th day you might have something out of your freezer, and that way you're not wasting food and you're not feeling stressed out that you have food. Shop once, prep the night before, or if that works for you, or the morning of, if that works for you. Never will for me because I'm not a morning person. Buy pre-cut fruits and vegetables. Or another thing that you can do is take convenience food, something like ready-made spaghetti sauce, and make it better. And you can put in the chat box if there's any convenience foods that you use that you make improvements to and share with others. Because I think one of the nice things about webinars is you don't just learn from the people who are talking, but you learn from what others are doing that face the similar challenges that you do. All right, so part of the thing about helping save time is planned overs, cook once, eat twice. Last week we had slow cooker pot roast. We had it again later in the week. It was really nice just to heat it back up, throw a few more vegetables in it, and it reduced waste and it reduced spending. And as I mentioned, use convenience appliances that work for you. All right, so let's look at some ways that you might make things healthier that you already make. So here are some baked apples. That is from one of Marie's classes, I believe. But things that you can do is to decrease the amount of sugar and fat. So just because the recipe calls for a certain amount of sugar doesn't mean that you necessarily need to use it. It's a little trickier like if you're baking bread, but in generally speaking, you can easily reduce sugar without making much of a change in a recipe. Look for flavors that complement each other. Make some kind of a basic ingredient substitution. For example, use maybe some whole wheat flour with regular flour. Add some fiber. Remove an ingredient. A, you don't like it. B, it's too high fat. B, you just don't happen to have any in your house. But or add an ingredient, something like mushrooms or more vegetables. I've been playing around with my meatloaf recipe, adding mushrooms, added shredded carrots, adding celery when I have it. I don't usually have celery. They all add nutrition, and add fiber, and also just gives it a little bit more flavor. And I started to throw a little bit of horseradish in my meatloaf too. Kind of gives it a little extra little tang. Change your cooking technique. Instead of baking it, throw it on the grill. Instead of frying it, oven fry it. Use an air fryer, which are pretty trendy. I haven't tried one. But also, when all else fails, just eat less. Adjust your portion size and fill up more on healthier ingredients. And so one of the umami flavors that were mentioned are mushrooms. And lots of mushrooms, there's a lot of really cool things you can do. And I suggest that you pull up the website listed below, which is from the Mushroom Council, which is a trade association for mushroom growers. It has lots of recipes. So some examples are, you can make a MLT, a mushroom, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. You can have like a grilled or pan-fried portobello mushroom slices, put them with lettuce and tomato on whole wheat toast like you would a BLT. Some other information from this website are sauteed mushroom and sun-dyed tomato avocado toast, marinated mushrooms and hummus toast, Asian lettuce wraps, mushroom chipotle chili. And I've had mushroom chili before that they've basically replaced all the beef with a variety of different mushrooms. It was absolutely fabulous. Also, kind of a funky thing that I've tried is mushroom jerky. That it's marinated and basically smoked, and it's really quite tasty. It was one of those things I tried at a food show, and I thought it was going to be kind of stupid, and it was really tasty. So I think we're going to see more of that. And so mushrooms do increase that umami flavor. So you can use them as an ingredient or as a mix-in. And so the Mushroom Council, part of their things that they talk about is about substituting it chopped up in ground meat, not just beef, and using that so that, and I realize these people are trying to get us to eat more mushrooms, but there are some good nutritional benefits to mushrooms. They tend to be high in vitamin D and some and other nutrients, but so they're improve the flavor, increase that umami flavor, and can help you reduce the amount of meat in your diet. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that dried mushrooms, especially shiitake nut mushrooms, which do have some of the higher umami flavor. So dried mushrooms do add more, since as they're dried, their flavors increase, so they do add a more intense flavor. Okay, sheet pan suppers. This is one of my favorite recipes, which is pork tenderloin with roasted potatoes and any other kind of vegetable I have in my house that can get thrown on that pan. In this case, I had Brussels sprouts. And so there are a lot of sheet pan supper recipes out there. And the nice thing about it is you pretty much throw everything on the sheet pan and roast. And so depending on what you're going to make, you may have to go to a little more thought about that. You may not just want to throw everything in on the pan at the same time, which is why recipes are handy, or there's the good old trial and error theory that works too, because say different foods cook in different amount of times. So you can use whatever veggies you like, or you can kind of use it to throw everything that you had in the refrigerator and your vegetable hydrator on here. And so when I make the pork tenderloin with the potatoes and whatever kind of vegetables, first of all, I always use my food thermometer. And so the food thermometer in this picture, it's got the probe that goes in your meat, and it's got the cord that comes out, and it sticks into the little thing that you see over on the side. And so that sits up on the counter. And so it will tell me what, you can set it to whatever temperature you want your meat to cook in. And so since I now own one of these, I have not overcooked a pork tenderloin, which is a miracle because I always overcook, not always, I often overcook my pork tenderloin and they're dry. And so this will improve your cooking. And so the reason the pork tenderloins in that foil packet that I just stick it in is so that the meat juices don't run out and get in my potatoes, because when the meat juice gets on the potatoes, they're not as crispy, and I like crispy potatoes. So when I cook it, I put my potatoes in first. I marinate them with well, not marinate them, toss with usually with some garlic, some olive oil, and whatever spices I happen to have. Fresh rosemary if I'm lucky. I put my potatoes in first because they take a little bit longer. And then while they're kind of get started cooking, then I toss my vegetables with whatever I want to toss them in. And then I just put my pork in the little foil thing, and usually throw my other vegetables and the pork in about the same time. And then when my pork's coming to room temperature, resting before I slice it, I leave the potatoes or the other vegetables in there to crisp up. One of my favorite easy recipes to make. I'm getting multiple vegetables and one dirty dish. My opinion doesn't get much better than that. You can tell I am not a gourmet cook. Alrighty, so here, and this picture is actually also in the slow cooker presentation from a few weeks ago, but pot roast. Great way to add umami flavors. And I was doing it before I knew I was doing it, because I've always thrown a can of low sodium diced tomatoes in on top of my meat and vegetables. I always liked that extra flavor that it gave as it cooked down. So now I know why it is. And I've also been starting to add mushrooms into a lot of different foods. I actually started that before I started reading about umami as well. But when I'm doing the slow cooker, if I have a chance, if I'm leaving in the morning, I'll throw the mushrooms in. But if I happen to be at home, when I'm cooking it, I'll throw them in later in the day, so that way they don't cook down quite as much. But but you could maybe throw some soy sauce in there if you're interested. And but slow cookers are a great way. And also the broth, sometimes called pot liquor, that's down the bottom after you've cooked all day, save it and use it for other things as a base for vegetable soup or anything else that you want to do it, because it's going to have that rich umami flavor of the meat and the vegetables and the tomatoes all cooking down. Alrighty. So another great way to add some umami flavors and nutrition and kind of an easy meal is stir fry. If you're feeling time crunched, you can also buy pre-cut up things at the store. But beef and broccoli is one of my favorites. The picture has water chestnuts in it, which adds an extra crunch. But you can add, so you'd have your soy sauce, you'd have your beef, and if you threw some more mushrooms in there, you'd really kind of get that really savory flavor. Over on the left, we have, chicken, carrots, mushrooms, all kinds of different ways to, put multiple things into one pan and to save time when cooking and give you that savory flavor. And so back to the not having a bunch of appliances you don't use. I don't know about you, but woks take a lot of room up in my cabinets. And so especially when I had a smaller cabinet, I used to stir fry a lot, and I had 2 woks. And over time I got rid of them both because they were just in the way. And so now I stir fry. I have a big fry pan. I stir fry in that. And you can also get smaller, they're actually called wok pans, which aren't as big as a whole wok, but they have that shape, and they're also nice to cook in. So stir fry is a good way, and there is a really nice handout from University of Kentucky Extension in your handout with some stir fry recipes. All right, so what about pizza? Actually, last week, Annie was talking about you can put pizza on your grill. Haven't tried that one yet, but it's on my to-do list. So lots of different savory ingredients. You can add them to existing pizzas that you might buy, or if you're carrying out, have them put those on. This one's got arugula, which is, to me, arugula is one of those, you love it or you hate it, kind of like cilantro. I like it. It's kind of got a peppery, kind of sharp taste to it, which is great in salads, but also lightly cooked on foods. And here, um, this pizza is actually on a pita shell. So that's really nice, something that you can use for multiple ways in your house. And if you're looking to really get into the mushroom stuff, I've made little mini pizzas with a portobello mushroom as the base. You kind of just scrape the gills out, put your toppings on it, and bake it. So I think pizzas are really one of those things that you can let your imagination run wild. And if you've got somebody in your house that doesn't like something, if you're doing individual ones, people can make their own however they want it. Saves down on that family strife sometimes during meals. All right. These two recipes are in your handout. Two of my favorites related to fruits. Alrighty, so you probably like the flavor of fresh fruits, but sometimes you just kind of want to take them to a higher level. So here's a couple ways to take fresh watermelon, which is in season now, add a few ingredients and transform it to a new level. So it's not really an umami level, but the one on the left, the watermelon salsa, is more of a savory. But also you can grow your fruits and you kind of caramelize some of that, the naturally occurring sugars. And two of my favorites are peaches and pineapple. But on these watermelon recipes, they've been winners in my in-person classes, especially the one on the right, which is the mint and lime. But you just take fresh watermelon, put some fresh lime juice on it, throw in some fresh mint and just a tad of olive oil to kind of make it all stick together. It's great, especially if you have a naturally sweet watermelon. It's just got this really fresh, nice flavor. And then the one on the right is different because it is that savory flavor. So you serve it more as a side dish, like with seafood or chicken. Both really good, and they're both in your handout. Alrighty, so Marie, the next two are recipes that you've done, so tell us about them.
Well, I was going to go ahead and throw out there that I like watermelon with a little bit of arugula, and then I spritz it with a little bit of lime juice, and it's just really good. So it's kind of a play off of one of your recipes. So yeah, that's awesome.
That would be good with arugula.
Yeah, it is. I promise. I wouldn't leave you.
You wouldn't lie to us, huh?
So the actual recipe for this. So we do a cooking school, or we were doing one every single year when I was in Jackson County. And we always made this challenge for kids to step out of their comfort zone. And this one particular student picked this Brussels sprout recipe because she said that she was not really fond of Brussels sprouts, but she really liked cabbage and whatever. So we took it. It was a very unhealthy recipe, and we tweaked it. We made it numerous different times, but I want you to know that the apples just took it to a whole new level. So I would highly encourage you to try this recipe. I usually use boneless, skinless chicken breasts, but you can use the thighs. That particular recipe there had thighs. If you don't have it doesn't matter. We made it with Red Delicious apples. We made it with Granny Greens. It never turned out bad. So I would just tell you that the flavors are really there, and it's a really wonderful recipe. So I'm just would love for you to try to step out of your comfort zone and move forward and find something that you really like. So the next one is also they took a really, really unhealthy pot pie recipe, we'll just call it. And our theme that particular year was from classic to cutting edge. That's why you see all these things in cast iron. But they made these pot pies with they did use the canned biscuits, which was probably not the healthiest, but it's not the worst either. But they substituted and they used carrots and lots of fresh onion and bell pepper, and they put turkey in there. They just really made it their own. So they really, you can take things and don't be afraid to experiment in the kitchen. You used to think you really had to really go with something that was traditional, or you don't vary from a recipe. But if I don't like an ingredient, I don't include it, and I put something in that I do like. So don't be afraid to do it. So the next one is actually what we called our cooking school, a healthy table. So we just wanted to connect a lot of the dots for you guys. And it really has been fun to really go through all these and realize, as Julie was saying, we didn't realize a lot of things that we were doing or we were teaching was actually the concept that we were putting forward today, the umami. So just think about it. And I'll go back to the pizza recipe. Julie really hit home there. You can make it anything you want. And my pizza, as she was presenting, I was envisioning olive oil base instead of the tomato sauce, with some basil, some onions, some peppers, some mushrooms, and just a light sprinkle of feta cheese. So we want you guys to have that healthy dish every day, savory things that you really, really, really want. So back to you, Julie. I think this one is yours.
Yes, it is. And it's saying Marie's 2 recipes are in your handout. So, but make them yours. So think about all the things that we've talked about, not just today, but in previous sessions. And I want to mention that I put a link in at the end of today's survey that will take you to the our website that's got all our different previous webinars on it. So if you missed one, save that link. So make your supper and all your other meals as you see fit. Maybe not, I don't know about a savory breakfast, but you could make one savory as well. But make your food healthy as well as savory. Think about planning ahead so you do have healthy foods, and think about that whole umami thing about how it magnifies the flavor. And look for ways that you can add that flavor to existing recipes. You probably already have plenty of recipes who have that umami flavor in, but maybe add one of the other ingredients or to it to kind of elevate it. And that way you can enhance your overall meals. And you can use this knowledge to help reduce your fat and the sodium in your recipes. But generally, make wise choices when preparing meals. You may want to change some of your meal preparation techniques or just ingredients. And then also to keep an eye on your portion size and to enjoy your food. And with that, what questions might we have?
Marie, I don't know if you were planning to ask or not, but while I'm waiting for you to join, I know there was one specifically on the mushrooms, and let me scroll down to it really quick.
Oh, I think I saw that where they were talking about, where was that?
So the gills of the mushroom, whether
Yeah.
you toss those out before, I know someone mentioned, I gave the tip about removing them before grilling, but then what do you do with those? Do you use them in another recipe?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I've never done that. I always put them in my compost because I guess I never really thought about putting them anywhere else or using them for anything else.
When I'm cutting them up, I leave the gill. I just generally take the stems off, although some people will use the stems and use them for making broth and stuff. But generally speaking, I still have the gills in mine, but like the portobello one with the, sometimes people don't like the texture or the flavor of them. And also, like if you're using the big portobellos for like the pizza, to make little pizzas, it works better without them.
There was another question on, and I'm not sure I'm going to reference it correctly, but it was about when you make different types of jerky, you're adding salt, or it says, doesn't it add salt when you're making, I don't know if you were referencing mushrooms at that time.
I was.
Okay.
And so there's a recipe on the Mushroom Council website, which I don't remember it exactly because that was one of my thoughts too. I think the one that I tried that was traditionally that was made for you know, somebody had packaged, had a little bit more salt, but it was healthier, had less. But there is a recipe on the Mushroom Council website for making your own basically in the oven. And I can't remember what was on it because it was like a day or two that I looked ago, but it didn't have a lot of sodium in it. So there were really lots of really interesting recipes on the Mushroom Council website.
If you
And
guys
also, if you Google umami foods, so there will also be some interesting websites that come up to, or umami recipes. I found some interesting one on the, they're on PBS, the Cook's Country website, or American Test Kitchen website. They had some interesting web recipes.
And I just wanted to make a comment. There's so many great suggestions in the comments. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out, please do so. Tons of great ideas.
Oh, good. I'm going to have to check them out since I couldn't see the
chat.
recipes since I was talking.
Sure. And Marie, I don't know if you saw any other questions?
No, ma'am, I did not.
All righty. In that case, please do fill out the today's survey, and in several months, we haven't figured out when, you'll be getting a follow-up survey for the webinar series, and we would also appreciate you filling that out. So we want to thank you for taking part in our food prep series.